What if Derrick Rose never got hurt? What's going on, everybody? Welcome into the Bulls Report. My name is Patrick Siepman, and coming up on today's show, I wanted to take a trip down memory lane and go over Derrick Rose's career and discuss what would have potentially happened for him and this Bulls team if he never ended up getting injured. But before we start today's show, let's show Derrick Rose some love. If you guys are the biggest Derrick Rose fan out there, hit that thumbs up icon, like today's video, as this was the guy that made me fall in love with basketball and just the Bulls as a whole. So show him our support on today's show and hit that thumbs up icon. So the biggest thing when I think about Derrick Rose is if this play never happened, when the Bulls were up 12 with about a minute 12 left against the Philadelphia 76ers in Game 1, Round 1 of the NBA playoffs, what would have happened to his career and what would have happened to the Chicago Bulls franchise as a whole if he never got hurt? I think this is the biggest what if in not just NBA history, but potentially all of sports history, as he was looking like to be one of the best up-and-coming players in the NBA. Now, here are his stats from his first 2 years. His rookie year, when he did win Rookie of the Year, averaged 16.8 points per game, 6.3 assists. He was actually pretty efficient from the field. Obviously did not develop that three-point shot just yet in his NBA career, but he was still able to get it done. And then we saw that jump in his sophomore campaign, got up to 20 points a game, was starting to become a better playmaker, and he was just still very, very efficient getting to the rim. But, you know, the main season of D. Rose's career, and the best one by far, was when he won that MVP award. This was back in the 2010-2011 season. He was fantastic, led the Bulls to the #1 seed in the Eastern Conference, winning over 60 games that season, and in 37 minutes a night, shout out Tom Thibodeau, but he averaged 25 points, 7.7 assists, and he was very efficient as well. And, you know, the biggest question mark with D. Rose at the time, I remember hearing this on Chicago sports radio all the time, is can that style play translate to the postseason? Now, we've heard this over and over again with those hyper-athletic guards of that Russell Westbrook build, you know, that really athletic archetype of a point guard. Can it translate to the postseason? Well, it did. In his postseason debut in his second year in the NBA, he dominated Rajon Rondo and the Boston Celtics in Game 1 of the playoffs. 36 points on only 19 shots in that game, 11 assists, 12 of 12 also from the free throw line. He was fantastic that season. So one point I will make about Derrick Rose is I hate the argument out there is that if D. Rose never got injured, he would have just been another Russell Westbrook. I promise you, go look right now. I already looked before today's show. Go find me a game where Russell Westbrook had more than 30 points and he was efficient from the field in a playoff game. That never happened. He was a high-volume shooter and obviously a high-volume scorer. D. Rose was the opposite. He was a pretty efficient basketball player, and I just think when you see, you know, two players that play the game in very similar fashions, you're just going to automatically compare them to each other, but they were very different also. D. Rose had more of a mid-range game in terms of coming up off pick and rolls, jumping into that pull-up jumper, where Westbrook was a lot more ISO pull-up jumpers. He never really was the best navigator around pick and roll. So I really hate that argument. I just think it's, you know, lazy analysis by anybody, you know, who says that out there. And, you know, you go back to that 2010 season when he won the MVP, the Bulls were set up to really, really make a run. Obviously, it ran into a wagon in the Miami Heat in the Eastern Conference Finals, but they won 62 games that season. And it was funny looking at the East this year. It was kind of loaded. Like, you had the big three in the Boston Celtics. Obviously, they were a little older at the time, but you had the Dwight Howard-led Orlando Magic as well. But the Bulls in that season ended up losing to the Heat in the Eastern Conference Finals 4-1, and this was a 21-year-old D. Rose who led the Bulls to the Eastern Conference Final that year, but he just ran into a prime LeBron, prime D. Wade, and a prime Chris Bosh, but he was still able to take a game. But you fast forward to next season in the holdout year for the NBA, the Bulls were again the #1 seed in the Eastern Conference, 50-plus wins that year. The Heat were the 2 seed. Paul George and the Pacers, they were an up-and-coming team. Then we started to see the tail off of the big three for the Boston Celtics that year, but the Hawks were also still good. Same with the Magic. And then this was the year. This was when the injury happened. It was round 1 versus 8 seed in the playoffs. Bulls ended up winning the first game, but they pretty much ended up losing that because D. Rose got hurt when the Bulls were up 12 with about a minute 12 remaining. I still have that, that image of where I was. I was watching the game in my basement. I remember I was watching with my dad at the time, and we were trying not to panic, trying not to say that he potentially went on and tore his ACL. Obviously, that ended up being the case, but that was a very disappointing year. I thought the Bulls could have potentially made the championship that season. Obviously, you would have had to have taken down the Miami Heat, but I thought the Bulls were gearing up to go on a run. But I'll ask you guys this question. 2.5 MVPs for D Rose if he never got hurt. Give me an O for over or give me a U for under down below in the comments section. This is a big hypothetical here, but if D Rose never hurts his knees, how many MVPs do you think he would have won? So in D Rose's second half of his career, we really saw his jump shot develop. He became a much better three-point shooter. He became a elite mid-range shooter. He honestly reminded me a little bit of a DeMar DeRozan, where he had a face-up game at a point in that low kind of LeBron area on the floor. He could just jab set, rise over the top, and hit a jump shot, or he could obviously put the ball on the deck and hit shots at a high rate there. So let's just assume, for the sake of argument, that D Rose would have continued to develop a jump shot and really become a overall great point guard. Well, that year, after D Rose, tore his ACL, the Bulls were still able to win 45 games that season. And I promise you, if you had a healthy D Rose coming off a bad loss in the Eastern Conference Finals and just knowing everything we know about him, about that hard work and that mentality he had, I could have saw the Bulls easily winning 60-plus games yet again that season. And I think the Bulls would have been able to battle with the Heat that year if Rose never got hurt. Obviously, this was a very, very good Miami Heat team. It would have been a battle, probably would have went 6-7 games, but with the Bulls developing into one of the better teams in the season that year, they would have definitely gave the Miami Heat a run for their money. I mean, this would have been the Bulls' potential starting lineup that season. They did have Kirk Heinrich. Shout out to Captain Kirk, who held it down at that point guard spot that season. But you would have been able to run D Rose at the 1, Jimmy Butler, a young Jimmy Butler, at the 2, and then you had Luol Deng, Carlos Boozer, and then another one of my favorite Bulls of all times, and Joakim Noah. Like, that is an elite starting 5. That's an elite defensive unit, as 4 of the players in that lineup besides Boozer are all elite defenders at their respective position. But the number one thing I think about in terms of D Rose never getting hurt is these two guys right here. What type of a duo could they have been throughout the NBA if D Rose never got hurt? As I actually think their games complement each other very, very well. Jimmy Butler is a great spot-up player. He's a pretty solid catch-and-shoot three-point shooter, at least in the later half of the career he was. But they were both elite defenders, and they were both tremendous athletes. I was actually watching some of Jimmy Butler's old Bulls highlights before I got on here. This dude was one of the better athletes in the league at the time when he first came in the league. You don't really see it anymore, but he was playing above the rim. He had alley-oops. He had these highlight-level dunks. It was fantastic. And, it kind of gets me to this to conclude my thoughts here. I think, and obviously I'm a Bulls fan, so this is a lot biased coming out, but I totally think the Bulls would have been able to win at least one championship if Rose never got hurt. I mean, they made the Eastern Conference Finals year 1 of D Rose really becoming a true number 1 option on a title contending team, and they ran into one of the best teams of all time in the Miami Heat. And also gets me to this, the Eastern Conference was just weak. Like, you remember when LeBron went through 9 straight NBA Finals? Yes, a lot of credit goes to him. He's the second best player of all time, but another big reason of that was because all he had to really do was go up against the Paul George Pacers. Like, he had to go up against the Carmelo Anthony-led Knicks. There really wasn't a bunch of wagons and powerhouses in the Eastern Conference. And you're telling me that the D Rose-led Bulls couldn't compete with the LeBron James, either Heat or Cavs teams, or the Paul George Pacers teams, or the Knicks led by Carmelo Anthony? Like, if you had a lineup of Rose, Butler, Deng, Boozer, Noah, you could have competed with all of these teams. And plus, as we've seen over the last couple of years in the NBA, continuity and chemistry matters. Teams just naturally go, through the adversity when trying to get to that championship hump. Well, the Bulls already went through that by going up against the Heat, losing 4-1 in the Eastern Conference Finals. They already got that out of the way. I think the Bulls would have won a championship, no doubt about it. Again, this is me. I'm a Bulls fan. I'm going to obviously take the optimistic, hypothetical here if D Rose never got hurt. But I'll ask you guys, would D Rose have won a championship with the Bulls if he never got hurt? What say you? Give me a Y for yes or an N for no. Now, if you guys want more Bulls videos like this where we're taking a look back in time and just playing a what-if hypothetical, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button, lock us in as your go-to Bulls YouTube channel. Really just want to say thank you guys so much for supporting the show as of late. The NBA season is just around the corner, so expect a lot more of these, fun, hype videos around the Bulls for the in the near future. So hit that subscribe button, lock us in, and as always, go Bulls.